Chloe.
Six of Britain's top rock musicians record a special song, a tribute to two dead stars of the group Badfinger. Tommy Evans, co-writer of numerous huge hits, was found hanged in the garden of his Surrey home in November 1983. He was 35. Peter Ham, the creator of Badfinger, killed himself 8 years earlier. He was discovered hanged in his garage.
It's the name of the game. Wondering would it ever end? A song for a lost friend. The midnight caller stand before the dark.
The words of this tribute are taken from Badfinger's hits. They're the titles of songs written by Peter Ham and Tommy Evans.
Come on again, knock the door. Without you, I can't live anymore. Tell me why, after everything I gave you, takes away, takes pain. When the light can't keep inside me, I'd rather die. Not face the truth within me, or the things you said you're gonna give me, take me high.
For a while, it seemed Badfinger, and especially Peter Ham and Tommy Evans, had everything. In the cutthroat world of pop, quick money and easy success often don't last. For Badfinger, it all went horribly wrong, victims of the rock and roll industry.
It's the classic pop story. How, you know, a group who are brilliant, they make great records. And the classic rip-off, the rock and roll rip-off, and what it led those guys to do.
If you want it, here it is, come and get it. But you better hurry, cause it's going fast. You better hurry, cause it's going fast. Who lent his money? Sonny, if
In the 70s, Badfinger began to appear on television. There were 6 major tours to the United States. They became almost more famous over the Atlantic than in Britain. The mainstays of Badfinger were its 2 chief songwriters, Peter Ham and Tommy Evans. Songs such as Come and Get It, No Matter What, and Day After Day earned them gold discs and reputedly a lot of money.
Where their strengths were is they, like Pete and Tommy especially, because, I mean, they realised the dream of every songwriter. They wrote a standard. You know, that's the dream of every songwriter. And they pulled it off. They hit the button. They've been to Babylon. You know, they've done it. They did it.
One song they wrote is among the all-time best-selling love songs, Without You.
No, I can't forget this evening or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the way the story goes. You always smile, but in your eyes your sorrow shows. Yes, it shows.
Peter Ham's widow and Petera, the daughter he's never seen, live today in Scotland. She's almost a look-alike for her father. After Peter died, Anne moved back to her family to work in a Glasgow hairdressing business.
And now it's only fair that I should let you know what you should know.
Peter Ham wrote the verses of Without You. The song's chorus was written by Tommy Evans. Like so many of their songs, its theme is sad and strangely prophetic. Tommy Evans also left a wife and small child.
I can't give anymore. I can't
Badfinger had its roots in Swansea back in the mid-1960s. The boy who started the group, Peter Ham, lived in a council house on the Town Hill estate. He made his first guitar during woodwork lessons at the local school. Later, he went to work with his brother as an apprentice television engineer. All the time, there was pop music. Peter formed a group with 3 other boys from Swansea. They called themselves the Ivies. They practiced in railway canteens, in scout huts, anywhere they wouldn't upset the neighbours. Ronnie Griffiths was one of the founder members of the group.
Well, in those days, it was just being semi-pro. We were making a bit of money on top of our day jobs. We worked hard, you know, rehearsing and things like that.
Did you have ambitions to stardom?
Well, when we started to get something of a reputation as a good band, and people actually applauded, and you know, you felt a reaction to what you play, and then obviously then, hey, this is good. This, I wouldn't mind doing this for a living and try and make the big time.
They built a big reputation in South Wales, touring the towns and villages in an old van. One night in Ammanford, the road manager of another group saw the Ivies and recognised their potential. He called a meeting of the boys and their parents.
All I said, I can promise you what Churchill promised us during the war years. I can promise you blood, sweat and tears, and that's all I can promise you. But if the boys follow my guidance, I'm sure that somehow we'll learn to write songs and record them properly. They've got all the recording studio techniques that are required. And it might take a while, and we've got to live very cheaply because I've got no money, no savings. But I said it should be a load of fun for them.
In 1966, they moved to London, to a rented house in Golders Green. They shared it with another group, the Mojos, and assorted other musicians. The Ivies spent their time practicing, composing songs, and travelling to concerts all over Britain. It was hardly glamorous. A Saturday night gig might bring in £25. But success wasn't far away. The extra pressures brought their first casualty, Ronnie Griffiths.
Ron's not one of the boys anymore. He's married. He's going to be a bad influence on the group. And it wasn't due to anything musical at all. It wasn't because I wasn't contributing anything musically. But because of the bad feeling and the friction, a meeting was had, and I was asked if I would step down.
How did you feel about that?
Oh, gutted. You know, it was an ambition to not so much be a pop star, but make a living at music, you know. And I could see all the spade work that I'd done and been involved with from the start going out the window, you know. I'd done my bit. I stand down, somebody else comes in and gets all the glamour and the rewards.
If you want it, here it is, come and get it. Make your mind up fast. If you want it.
A song written by Paul McCartney took them into the charts. Ronnie Griffiths played and sang on the record. He didn't share in the success.
Well, at that stage, I was doing a 6 till 2 shift in a firm in Hemel called Dexians, on a push bike going to work. I'd get there in the morning and work on the line, and the blokes were singing "Come and Get It," and I was standing there doing my bit, climbing up. I never used to actually beef about the fact I was in the group. So you can imagine what it was like. Everybody singing, "If you want it, here it is, come and get it," and there's me on the damn record, standing on this production line. I was gutted.
If you want it, here it is, come and get it. But you better hurry, 'cause it's going fast.
Ronnie Griffiths was out. The group had another member lined up. Joey Molland, a singer and guitarist from Liverpool, joined Peter Ham, Tommy Evans, and the drummer from Swansea, Mickey Gibbons. The group began to gain a reputation. Some critics saw them as the new Beatles, an image they played on in their promotional pictures. Their links with the Beatles didn't end there. Paul McCartney wrote their first hit. Another Beatle was their guiding influence, George Harrison. They joined the Beatles' Apple organization. Harrison helped make the deal.
Tell you what, Bill, you're not going to get ripped off like we were ripped off in our day. Well, he said, with us, you got 5% and you don't pay any production costs. Suddenly that was great, because even with 4.5%, unless you got million sellers, you couldn't make money off recording royalties. So I think that was a fantastic deal. But I didn't negotiate. I'm no businessman. I didn't pressurize him. And he just, that's what he wanted to do.
No matter what you are, I will always be with you.
The Ivies changed their name to Badfinger. As a group so closely tied to the Beatles, they seem to have arrived. From their earliest days, they'd taken only pocket money. In 1970, each of them was living on just £7.10 a week. They were making records that were selling in millions, but the money wasn't getting through to them. Pop stars they may have been in name, but they certainly weren't pop stars in lifestyle.
He was changing for the gig and had on what I thought was a pair of, I don't know, comic shoes. The soles were coming away, like the old vaudeville comedians or something like that. And I said, oh, part of the act, do you do a comedy number? He said, no, those are my stage shoes. I said, well, you can't wear those on stage. I said, you know, you're the local idol coming back. He said, they're the only ones I've got. And I said, well, why didn't you buy some new ones? He said, I can't afford it, I got no money. And then I went and got him a pair of my new shoes and gave them to him, and he wore those in the gig, you know, so, and I never got them back. I enjoyed the kicks that they got on stage, enjoying the glory that went with suddenly being pop stars, and the money was being possibly bulldozed to the back of a pile and doled out to them with a teaspoon from the front of the pile.
Their success in Britain soon spread across the Atlantic to the United States. In all, they had 6 major American tours, playing all the largest cities. If anything, they were more popular there than in Britain. That fact didn't go unnoticed by American impresarios. They signed up with a New York-based manager, Stan Polly, and formed an American company, Badfinger Enterprises Incorporated. Stan Polly was listed as the company's president. For this period, whatever the group earned in the United States went not to the members of Badfinger, but to the American company. There were promises of some very rich pickings.
Now, I believe that Polly meant well, although he's a very astute businessman. You know, he knows all the tricks. And he told us, he said, I know all the tricks, but if you play ball, I'll play ball, and we'll all get along fine, and we'll all finish up millionaires. And in 3 or 4 years' time, you'll be able to retire, and then do whatever you want to do.
If you want it, here it is, come and get it.
Not everyone was satisfied with the American management. One member of the group, Tommy Evans, was suspicious about what Badfinger were letting themselves in for.
Well, he didn't want to sign up with him. When was it? 72, I think. And we went over to New York, and everybody else had signed, and everybody left back to England, and we stayed behind because he didn't trust him. He said, I have to check him out, find out about him, what he's like. He was a, kind of shady person. And he didn't trust him. And the guy said, you can have everything you want later, keep all the money in America. And Tommy said, okay, I want a midnight blue Targa. Next morning he had his midnight blue Targa in front of the door.
That's the Porsche?
Yeah. And he said, I want to go on to France, first class back to England. Yes, you can have your ticket. So he got in that week everything he wanted. But he had to sign because everybody else signed. There was no other option for him. So after a week he signed, but he knew he signed his life away, really. But there was nothing he could do.
To the pop world, it probably seemed that Badfinger had arrived when they went to live in Clearwell Castle in the Forest of Dean.
Looking out from my lonely room, day after day.
They installed their own recording studio in the castle. These were the good times. They lasted for just over a year.
The happiest year I had with the boys, because it was away from everything, away from show business, away from crazy people. It was just a castle, us, few pigs, few cows in the field, and I played outside, rehearsed outside. It was wonderful. We were like a big family, playing games every night, no television, just living in the country, outside. It was wonderful those days.
Becoming millionaires seemed to be just around the corner. Superstardom beckoned when they were offered a multi-million-dollar recording contract with Warner Brothers. The initial down payment was $500,000. Stan Polly negotiated the deal and explained it to Bill Collins.
Took me all around New York in a big limo, and he said, it's no good to let him read this contract, but it's 3 inches thick. But he said, basically, you've got to understand, and he talked and talked and talked and drummed into my mind that we had a $3 million deal to make 6 albums in 3 years. And don't forget, that is 15 years ago. That was a big deal. And Polly was very pleased, of course. Common sense, wasn't it? And
this was all worked out in the back of a limousine in New York City?
Yeah, riding around in the dark. And he was speaking from memory all the time, you know. And I've got copies of the Warner deal contract, but he said, it's no good you trying to read through the legalese. I'll explain it in ordinary language.
If you want it, here it is, come and get it.
In America, it all began to turn sour. There were rows about their style of music, about the management, about the future. Internal jealousies came to the fore. Peter Ham left the group for a while. Warner Brothers started an action for breach of contract. As part of the legal tussle, all payments to the group were stopped. In 1975, the pressures became too great for Peter Ham. Early on the morning of April the 24th, he was found hanged in the garage he'd converted into a workroom. He shared the house in Surrey with Anne and her son Blair. Peter Ham was 27.
No, I can't forget this evening, or your face as you were leaving, but I guess that's just the way the story goes.
When he committed suicide, Peter Ham, co-writer of a song that has sold 10 million copies around the world and been recorded by more than 180 different artists, believed he was penniless.
He got to the point he couldn't even pay the mortgage on the house because the money wasn't coming over. He tried constantly phoning him. He couldn't get him on the telephone. I was going in to have the baby. He didn't have any money for me getting into hospital, which upset him as well. And as I say, he was constantly on the telephone, couldn't get a hold of him. And he shouldn't have had those worries. He could have paid for the house outright with the money he had. He'd never spent, very little of the money he had from his songwriting, from his gold discs and everything. But at the end of he was told he was left, he had nothing. He got a phone call one night saying that there was nothing left, he had no money.
A few nights before he died, Peter Ham telephoned the United States to talk to Stan Poses, a one-time executive in the American company Badfinger Enterprises Incorporated. He'd left the firm in 1972.
The gist of this phone call to Pete was, because Pete used to kind of stick up for management, you know. And this phone call basically sort of said, look, you know, there isn't any money here. And that guy that you think believes in you doesn't really, you know. So, you know, I think everyone had told Pete that, but this kind of put the lid on it, you know what I mean? It was like, oh no, it's true. Do you know what I mean? And I think if there was one extra factor that pushed him over the edge, that was probably it.
Peter Ham spent the last night of his life with his songwriting partner, Tommy Evans. They'd both bought modest houses within a short distance of each other near Weybridge in Surrey.
He was here till 1 o'clock. They were upstairs writing songs, and he was... they talked about money problem. Pete talked about money problem because his girlfriend was pregnant. And he wanted to give her a good life. He wanted to bring his child up, you know, quite comfortable. But he didn't have any money. So he was quite depressed, but I didn't think he was that depressed. But then he kept things to himself, really.
Tommy Evans and Peter Ham had spent the evening talking about the group's problems. Tommy said afterwards, the last thing Peter said as he left him that night was, "I know a way out."
It was the furthest thing from my mind that Pete would ever do anything like that. He wasn't the sort of person to hurt me in that way, to do anything like that. I mean, I would never in a million years thought Pete would have done anything like that. Never.
Among the musicians recording the tribute to Peter Ham and Tommy Evans at Rockfield Studios in Gwent was a pianist who played with Badfinger.
I remember myself, Tommy and Pete going to other management companies in London saying, look, we're in this terrible situation, you know, and we'd really just like to continue our career. We just want to play. And the companies were sort of saying, well, who are you with? And we'd mention the setup, and they'd say, well, you get out of that and then come and see us, you know. Well, we're not going to do anything right now. And I think with Pete, it was well, with all of us really, but it was the frustration of not being able to go forward, you know. We just seemed to be stuck in a no man's land. There was no money. We could have almost written all that off if we could have just carried on and, you know, started again. Do you know what I mean? But it was difficult to start again.
In the months when Badfinger were receiving no money, they put their frustrations about the management and their contract into two songs which have never been released. One was called Oh Mr. Manager, the other All Tied Up in a Rock and Roll Contract. The lyrics of this second song were strangely prophetic.
2 days after Pete died, Stan Pauly's sort of right-hand man flew over to Surrey to ask me if there was anything I needed. 2 days after Pete had died, yet Pete had been trying to get hold of him for months and couldn't get him. It had to take that Pete had to die first before he would send someone over. Then they asked me, did I need anything? 2 days after he died, yet Pete could never get hold of him. When I came back to Scotland to have Peter, when I came out of hospital, I got a phone call from his secretary asking me if I would send a letter off to Mr. Pauly, exonerating him for any cause in Pete's death or anything like that, if he wasn't to blame.
Did you do that?
No, I didn't. I would like to tell you what I said. No, I didn't do it.
Did Peter leave any note, any indication why he might have done it?
Yes, he left a note to me, and he said, Anne, I love you. Blair, I love you. That's my son. But I can't go on any longer. And that was the note he left.
Listen to a lonely sound. See the grey and sadness all around.
Tommy Evans was devastated by Peter Ham's suicide. So were the rest of the group. For a while they split up, all going their different ways. Tommy Evans and Bob Jackson combined to start a group known as the Dodgers. But there were also numerous attempts to revive Badfinger. Another American entrepreneur promised them great things from a tour of the United States. It turned out to be a disaster.
Essentially, the guy didn't have anything lined up. And we sat in this house, we literally starved, I can remember eating saltines with, you know, salted biscuits with jam on them, you know, that's all we had. We were stranded. Anyway, this guy was telling us about his heavy mafia connections and how if we left and Anyway, eventually we did. It was like Escape from Milwaukee, you know. Anyway, we came back. And then we got another tour fixed up and started again, and suddenly the bailiffs, we had our wives ringing up. Tommy had Marianne ringing up, and I had Chris ringing up, saying the bailiffs were coming round, and there was liens on the houses and all that sort of thing. And I mean, eventually we were proved innocent, but Tommy never lived to see that, you know.
He said, they're going to take our house away, they'll take everything away, because he's going to sue me for $5 million. And he was a nasty person. I know that as well. So, everything went wrong for Tommy as well. Tax problem, taxman after him. Somebody sued me for $5 million. So everything just collapsed. He couldn't see any way out of it.
Tommy Evans committed suicide in the garden of his home in November 1983.
Good days, I told myself my life would be my own, and I'd leave the place where sunshine never shone. For my life's too short for waiting. When I see the rising sun, then I know again that I must carry on.
Tommy, the most volatile member of the group, was worried by the threat of the lawsuit. There were other worries too, about money and about his health. He developed a lump in his throat. He feared cancer despite his doctor's reassurances. Most of all, he never recovered from Peter Ham's suicide.
Devastated, depressed, couldn't do anything anymore. They were the closest together, and especially Peter moved down here. He lived down the road, about half a mile away. So they saw each other every night. They've been, you know, two close friends. And when he died, Tommy didn't have anybody he can talk to, write songs. His other half was gone. So he felt lost and lonely. Many times he said, I want to be there where he is. He said it many times.
And when the heavy journey's done, I'll rest my weary head.
After Tommy Evans died, the High Court had to decide how to divide nearly £500,000 worth of royalties from songs written for the Apple organisation. Widows, the two surviving members of Badfinger, and the manager in Britain and the United States. The estate of Peter Ham alone has been represented by 6 different lawyers. His family and Tommy Evans's family each received 1/5 of the money available. Whatever money the group believed they'd earned in America was never recovered.
The indications are that money stayed on the other side of the Atlantic, and we're talking about an awful lot of money, far more than ever trickled in over here.
Why haven't you pursued that money? Why haven't you tried to get it back from the United States?
We were provided with some unaudited accounts which indicated that some of the group's tours had been so expensive, and because of alleged breach of contract with Warner Brothers, they had a counterclaim, and it became expedient in the end to write this money off, because possibly the money that was safely this side of the Atlantic might have been channeled to the other side of the Atlantic to try and fund litigation which may well have ended up hopeless. And we had to make a clinical decision to cut and run.
Today, surviving Badfinger member Joey Molland lives in America. He's still trying to revive the group for an American tour, along with another original member, Mickey Gibbons, who also lives in the States. Even now, there's legal action pending in America over who actually owns the group's name. In Swansea, the name Ham remains on his brother's music business. He tries to put a philosophical face on the tragedy.
Neither Pete, Bill Collins, Badfinger, or certainly any of our family or any of their families have seen anything like the amount of money that should have been there. But having said that, they've probably done it by choice. They reached the heights and were very happy being there. It's just a terrible pity that the whole thing had to end in such tragedy for, firstly for Peter, and then for Tom.